Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another review of another random movie. And these are being made all over the place. So some you'll see that poster, some you won't. So in case there's confusion in the future. But the film I'm reviewing today is In the Army Now, which is a film I've enjoyed ever since I was a kid. And I do enjoy it more for just nostalgia reasons. I do sincerely think that this is a very funny movie. I would say it's my favorite film with Pauly Shore. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people today who either hate Pauly Shore, most people do, or they don't know who the fuck Pauly Shore is. So, Pauly Shore, in a way, and you could say to a lesser extent, was the predecessor to Adam Sandler. Now, Adam Sandler was much more successful and lasted a lot longer, but I mention them as two people who have a certain shtick that either people hate or people grew to hate, and they got tired of the person, they're tired of their shtick, and then told them to go away, to leave, goodbye. Like I said, Adam Sandler lasted a lot longer, was much more successful, and like I said in my Adam Sandler marathon, where I reviewed a lot of his movies, I like a lot of Adam Sandler films. I love Airheads, which I reviewed, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, The Wedding Singer, Punch Drunk Love. When I reviewed those, I said I like Adam Sandler to a point. Do I like all of his? No. Especially a lot of his Netflix stuff. Wait, I shouldn't even say that. It was like Click. I didn't hear. Well, I already talked about those movies. For those interested, I have those reviews on the channel. Just feel free to go to my channel and type in Adam Sandler. But again, to this, Pauly Shore, he was the son of Mitzi Shore, who was a woman who owned the Comedy Store, a very popular place that stand-up comedians would go and do the material. And he grew up in the world of comedians. And one of his mentors was Sam Kinison himself. So growing up amongst all these people, meeting all these people, I believe one time he met Richard Pryor, he met all these guys. And when he was in his teens, got a job at MTV. He was an MTV VJ, and he would have the shtick of a stoner character, which you didn't actually see him do drugs, but he was sort of a, stoner is probably the wrong word, I would say surfer type, where he's like, hey buddy, stop squeezing the juice, what's going on? Like that sort of dialect, which became popular on MTV. That lasted quite a few years. And it helped lead him. He did like Spring Break when MTV would do all these specials. You know, when MTV actually played music, since it was music television, they used to have this thing called music or music television. Holy shit. Such a weird concept nowadays. Because if you turn on MTV nowadays, it's just a lot of fucking shows that have nothing to do with music. But at this point, it was. And he was in a couple early films. Phantom of the Mall, Heiress Revenge, which I had on VHS, but it was like a cut version, so I got rid of it. Because if I want to see that, I want to see the uncut version. He had a role in that and some other films, but his big role was Encino Man, which I have on DVD, and I enjoy that film. It's a weird, silly idea. Brendan Fraser, he's a caveman, he was in the ice, he gets unthawed, he escapes, and he meets up with Sean Astin from the Goonies and Pauly Shore, and they teach him how to be a student at high school. And it's a silly, goofy idea, but it's fun because the cast worked well together, has some entertaining gags in it, and that was the first experience of Pauly Shore. He was a supporting actor. People really gravitated toward the character, at least a good chunk, and so he got a starring role in The Son-in-Law, which again I have around here. I'm still trying to. It'll take months to get all this situated, but I enjoy The Son-in-Law. I'm a fan of that film. I think it's a very funny movie, and then that led into other roles like In the Army Now, which, like I said, is my favorite role he's done. But with each film, it got lower and lower box office. I think this film made about $28 million. I don't know what the budget was, so I don't know if that was a hit or a flop. But then after this, he would do films like Biodome, which, like at best is a time waster, but there's a lot of stuff in that I don't care for, so it's a mixed bag. Biodome, and then Jury Duty, which I think is his worst film, at least of the ones I've seen. And Jury Duty really, he still made other films and other stuff, but that was sort of the final nail in the coffin of his career. Because then he had this TV show, Pauly, which lasted like 5 episodes. Uh, Years later, he did this thing, Pauly Shore's Dad, which is sort of a not a satire on his life, but sort of he's playing himself, and him playing himself fakes his own death in order to reinvigorate his career. And that's a film that's interesting with the amount of famous people he got into it. And once you know that his mom was the owner of his comedy club and he grew up in this environment for all those years, that's probably how he got all these celebrities in that film. Well, yeah, if you watch it today, even Adam Sandler has a cameo in that. His voice at least does. And I know he's made a couple other films, but I have not seen them. If you watch him in interviews, he seems like a dick, or he's out of fucking La La Land, or I don't know what it is. I mean, I like him in his movies playing these characters. I don't think he'd be a guy I'd ever want to meet in real life, to be honest. That's just the vibe I get. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm perfectly wrong on that. But going with this film, it stars Pauly Shore and Andy Dick. They're two guys who work at this electronics store, Crazy Boy, and they do this shit. We're a crazy boy. We're giving it away. I mean, the first thing you see is them playing a video game on the 3DO, really enough. Like a war game, funny. And I don't know why, that, even as a kid, maybe because being a kid, you're into video games. Like, oh, wow, the first scene is them playing a video game. Interesting. That's a cool way to start the film. And they're talking with each other. They're commenting on the game, which I thought was fun. And again, people got tired of Pauly Shore's stick. I didn't. Because it didn't last for 50 movies or, I mean, technically, really 5 movies if you think about it. Encino Man, Son-in-Law, In the Army Now, Biodome, and Jury Duty. So, again, only a handful of films. So maybe that's why. And then Jury Duty I thought was awful. And Biodome, it wasn't him that was bad. It was just a lot of the dads just weren't that funny. But again, that's like a time waste because I don't mind his chemistry with Stephen Baldwin. But anyway, getting back to this, I do like some of the lines, the way he says it. Like when he's talking to his boss, is that brute I smell? That is brute I smell, you pervert. I just liked, again, it didn't really bother me the way he said certain things of dialogue. And it did make me laugh, and it was in my psyche ever since I was a kid. To the fact that even before the line comes up, I still can picture it in my head. But they get fired because something's happened. They don't know what to do, and then one thing leads to another. They figure, hey, let's go into the Army Reserves. And Pauly Shore sees this thing. Oh, well, there's water cleaning. Hey, my cousin's a pool cleaner. You know, what are they going to do if there's a war, huh? Well, we don't go in there with water balloons, huh? And he's talking to Andy. What was the last war, huh? World War II? What was that, huh? Like, what, 20 years ago? Listen, they're ready to pay us $2,500. You times that by 2, it is $6,000. And just the commitment of knowing this shit but being a complete idiot. Like, 2,500 times 2, he thinks it's $6,000. What was the last war? 20 years ago? What was that, like World War II? Uh, Even some of the songs I remember since I was a kid. So maybe nostalgia does play a hand in it, but I don't think it's the whole thing. Because even watching today, I still thought it was very funny. And when I was talking about song, I still remember when he gets his haircut and the song goes, "Did a haircut and did a new job." And Pauly Shore at this time was sort of known for his long hair, and it was different seeing him with such short hair. But of course, being in the military, that has to work. I kind of want to ask my friend Fabio now. Fabio, since he was in the military, I mean, I wouldn't say this is realistic, but if there's anything in this film that rings true with the service. And so, it was nice that someone actually caught this. When I did my Dolph Lundgren marathon, I did the video on his workout, and the guy mentions of doing push-ups, and I said something like, all the way up and down, right? There was one person who's like, that was in the Army now, right? That was a reference to that. I'm like, that guy is, if you're watching, good job. Very astute of you. Yes, that was from this film where they get in and there's this female drill sergeant. I thought she did a good job on the role. And it's like, give me 20. Well, I don't have my wallet. I said 20 push-ups. Okay, all the way up and down, right? One. Is that it? And he just goes through basic training, some fun stuff. She tells him like 3 times with a grenade, drop the pin, you throw the grenade. You understand now? Like I said, drop the pin, throw the grenade. So he throws the pin and drops the grenade, and he has to save her life. Oh, I owe you one. No, you owe me 50. So after basic training, they get into water purification, is what it's called, and then you meet more of the cast. You have Lori Petty, who I do like. I liked her in Tank Girl, and I liked her in this movie. She kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened to her, but for a little while she was in a couple films, and but I guess because those films didn't really do well. I know at one point she was going to be in Demolition Man, but I don't know like the reasons why she got let go or fired. And then they put in Sandra Bullock, which Sandra Bullock was the better fit for that. But I thought it was interesting. Like Laura Petty was going to be in Demolition Man. I'd like to hear more of that story about what happened. But I like Lori Petty. David Alan Grier, which I think is one of his best roles in this film. He's a guy who wants to be a dentist and he's scared of everything. So he's always jumpy. They go through water purification training. Things go well with that. And then they're out in the real world, and then they get called that they got to go to Chad in Africa. And another familiar face, Art LaFleur. If you don't know who that is, he was a dad in the Blob remake, where uh, I always remember the scene in that film where Shawnee Smith brings her boyfriend home, and the dad looks up, sees the boyfriend, and he goes, "Ribbed." I'm not going to what that means if you haven't seen the film. If you just see the Blob remake from 1988, one of the best monster movies ever. But if you've seen the film, you know what I mean, and you know what that's reference to. But Arlen LaFleur is in this as a sergeant, and he's like, "I'm your first sergeant." And Pauly Shore is like, I would like you to be, but I had a couple sergeants in the past. I already had a couple." And there's been some lines in this film I've stolen and used in real life or in reviews. Like there's some people that they get in a fight with, and one of the lines Pauly Shore is like, I don't know, how's it feel to be a dick, dick? And the first time I heard that was in this. And, Brendan Fraser, because he worked with Pauly Shore and Encino Man, he would show up a couple times. He showed up in a cameo in Son-in-Law, and then he showed up in a cameo in this as well. Which that was a fun, like, Easter egg to see Brendan Fraser pass it by. And pretty much this is their journey. Things happen. Uh, their truck breaks down. They get stuck in the desert, trying to find their way. Andy Dick sees a mirage, so he takes off all of his clothes. And, Pauly Shore goes, listen, you can stay here, fry, and someone will use you for an Arab ashtray. Or you put your clothes on and we can get out of here and open up a stereo store. They get to a place to kill a snake. And I know this seems stupid to people, but I remember certain sound effects where after he kills the snake, Pauly Shore does this weird thing like, ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da. And, I don't think Pauly Shore was as bad as people made it out to be. He's, obviously not everyone's cup of tea, but at this point, in this area, I don't know about nowadays, but in this area of his life, I thought he was actually pretty funny. Like I said, like Encino Man sent along this film. I thought it was a good trifecta of movies. And I mean, it's not as funny as Stripes. I would put Stripes with Bill Murray head and tails above this. But, you know, fuck, you want to see a bad film of this nature? Watch Delta Farce with Larry the Cable Guy. Like a bad movie dealing with military, Delta Farce. What we call Delta Fart. That's a bad version of this movie. At one point, they deal with this guy to get a camo. They get caught. Lori Petty kind of falls in love with Pauly Shore. This one bit that makes me laugh is when the place is being bombed and they're in their cell. There's one shot they put in with all the characters and their faces together, and they're just screaming at the camera like, ah, like a really quick edit to them screaming, and then back to the explosions happen. I don't know why, but that made me laugh. There's a point where they get Doom Buggies, and there's this target they need to paint for the bombs to come by. They save the day. Things going well. They get this stereo store. All the characters are working together at this stereo store, which happens to be next to the Army Reserve recruiting place. And I liked quite a bit of the songs in the film. I can't remember the name of the songs, to be honest. I'm never good with the name of songs. But I thought the soundtrack was pretty decent. The pacing is fine. This film is not that long of a flick. 92 minutes long. Andy Dick, honestly, I would say this is the best role he's played because I'm not usually an Andy Dick fan. But I thought he worked off fairly well with Pauly Shore. I thought they had some nice chemistry with each other. Lori Petty, I liked. I liked her spunk. I liked her attitude. David Alan Grier is a talented guy. He didn't get too many roles. I mean, he was good in Boomerang. He was also in Blank Man, which I could never get into Blank Man because David Wayne's character just annoyed me in that movie. But this is one of my favorite roles that he's done. Like I said, it was nice to see people like Art LaFleur in there, Brendan Fraser making a cameo. I got quite a few chuckles and laughs out of it. It has a good nature to it. Like I say, it's good fun. That's the best way to play it. It's good fun. In the Army now, entertaining flick. I enjoy it for what it is. Sad to say this film has no features whatsoever. Doesn't even have a trailer. And I highly doubt this. I doubt any Pauly Shore films on Blu-ray because he was so hated. I mean, like people were liking the stuff, and then it made a 180 turn, and in a way, it was ridiculous with just how harsh that turn was. I mean, Kevin Hart, you could say has the same shit too, but it's not like he's made more than 5 films, and it's not like he's gotten that harsh 180 turn. Even Adam Sandler, when people get tired of his stuff, it still wasn't as harsh of a 180 turn as Pauly Shore. Like it kind of boggled my mind. Because of those 5 films, like 3 I enjoy, 1 is meh, Biodome. And Jury Duty, yeah, it was bad, but not to the he's the worst comedian ever in history bad. Not that level. So yeah, I did say I'm a Pauly Shore fan of his early stuff. I like his movies, good chunk of them. And this one is I laughed at the most. I like its take on stripes, you know, stuff that happened in the military. I never got bored with it. And it was directed by Daniel Petrie Jr., which that name sounds familiar, and I don't know why it sounds familiar. I have to look it up real quick, which I wish I looked this up before I did the video, but I'm like, why does that name sound so familiar? Army Daniel Petrie. So pretty much I just gotta go to Wikipedia. Sorry, that'll take a few seconds. Yeah, this has a 4.9 on IMDb. I don't think it's that bad of a film to get a 4.9. I mean, what was the last comedy? Like Vacation, that shitty new Vacation film. Well, it came out a few years ago. That's way worse than anything in this movie. But oh, it was the last film Pauly Shore did as a three-film contract with Disney. The previous two being Encino Man and Son-in-Law. Because yeah, this was Hollywood Pictures, which was a division of that. Oh, okay. He was the original writer of Beverly Hills Cop. Granted, that got rewritten and ad-libbed, so probably not much of his stuff was left in Beverly Hills Cop. I remember him being on the interview on the DVD of Beverly Hills Cop. Again, I think all his stuff got out, but he outright turned Hooch, which I don't mind. That's what it is. He directed Toy Soldiers with Sean Astin. That's a film I need to pick up sometime on Blu-ray, because there is a Blu-ray of that out there. But Toy Soldiers is a pretty good flick. Sean Astin, Louis Gossett Jr., Andrew Devoff, the Wishmaster himself as the villain. That's where it's an all-male boarding school taken over by terrorists, as Sean Astin and Will Wheaton and other people have to try to take the school back. I mean, there's some action, but it's more like a thriller, action, drama, but also, some escapism fun as well. Yeah. So he directed Toy Soldiers, interesting, and then went on to direct this. Two pretty different movies. Thought that name sounded familiar. Okay. But yeah, In the Army Now, I think it's a fun film. But either way, thanks for watching, take care, and we will see you in the next video.